Today I ask Paula Fredriksen, in what ways has your mind changed over the decades from the first publications you've written to today pertaining to Jesus? She goes on and explains, I want to say thank you to those who made this whole series of videos, there's 12 altogether, possible. Thank you for joining the Patreon as well, for everybody who keeps us going. I hope you enjoy Paula Fredriksen. Paula, I'm interested in knowing, as an academic who's been doing this for a long time, you have your publication, pull this up here, specifically Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews in 1988. And then, of course, in 1998, there's the PBS Frontline, where you did from
Jesus to Christ.
From Jesus to Christ. And then, of course, the latest, greatest, Paul, the Pagans Apostle, which I really got a lot of stir up for me and people in my circles. But what would you say, like, you still think, and then what have you changed your thinking on throughout the process of your scholarship in your publications?
Wow, that's decades we're talking about. If I hadn't changed my mind, I'd be pretty disappointed in myself.
Right.
I think in terms of Jesus of Nazareth, one of the big differences between the 1988 version of From Jesus to Christ and it was republished in 2000, and I wrote an introduction to the 2000 edition arguing against one of the central arguments in the body of the book.
Wow.
And what changed my mind was going to Israel and standing on the Temple Mount. I had, as many people after E.P. Sanders' Jesus and Judaism, had taken the scene in the temple as that whole Markan chronology where Jesus gets in trouble because of flipping over the temple tables, and Sanders argued that Jesus was not preaching against the temple. What he was doing was enacting a prophecy of destruction. And that's what was symbolized by the turning over of the tables. And then there are lots of other places in Mark where Jesus talks about you see these stones, there won't be these great buildings, there won't be one stone upon another. So that's one of the reasons why we think Mark is written post-destruction. Mm-hmm. But having Jesus actually flip the tables means that it's a pre-destruction prophecy of the destruction of the temple. And I thought that was plausible. And then I actually went physically to the Temple Mount, and the place is enormous. It's like a park with several mosques in it. It was in the original, Herod's original building, the wall around the Temple Mount. He took Mount Zion, right, and he did landfill and made it into a mesa. And the wall around the edge of the temple went for 9/10 of a mile. The place is gigantic. And the courtyard of the Gentiles is the largest courtyard. And it would have been jammed with humanity because that's where the religious tourism would be, and also Jews cutting through there. And I looked at it and I thought, there'd be no way that anything would be visible in this crowd. The tables of the money changers would have been under the stoa, out of the sun and the rain. So somebody's going under the stoa in a corner of it was like, where's Waldo? I mean, I thought, this doesn't make any sense. So that was seeing the physical space made me start thinking, wait a minute. And so, well, maybe just his followers were the ones who kept the tradition alive, and they were standing near him, so they got to see it, but nobody else would have seen it. But then how did he get in trouble with the priests if nobody could see it? All right, fine. And then I started looking at Paul's letters as well. And if Jesus, at this crucial moment in his ministry, if we can use that phrase, predicts the destruction of the temple, and if Paul in so many of his letters talks about the signs of the coming kingdom, why doesn't he know anything about the destruction? Why is he saying to the Thessalonians, I know people have died before Jesus came back, but remember the temple has to be destroyed first before he comes back? He doesn't say anything like that. So, and the fact that Paul, we know, did know Peter and James and John and that original generation, and Paul knows nothing of any such prophecy. So between 1988 and 1999, I really think the reason that Jesus ends up executed by Rome, probably with the priests assisting Pilate, because they know the neighborhood. Pilate just goes up 3 times a year. is that there was such popular acclamation that Jesus was the Messiah. And Romans don't like kingly figures of subject peoples. And Rome had a very effective way of discouraging that type of movement. They killed people.
And would you say maybe the Jews, in some sense, that obviously don't like this guy bringing in this message to the temple?
Pilate made a mess diplomatically. He brought shields into Jerusalem once when he went up, which had imperial insignia on them, and everybody knew that the emperor thought he was a god, and so Jews get all upset about the shields, and that's a gaffe on Pilate's part. Philo says that he's known for his execution of untried prisoners. He makes such a mess. There's an incident with a Samaritan prophet, and Pilate sends out the troops because, again, it's a popular prophet massing a popular following. Pilate sends out the troops, makes such a bloody mess, he's fired from the job after that. So Pilate has a trigger finger and or a lead foot, depending on which metaphor you want to use. And I think the only reason Jesus would have, crucifixion is a very public form of execution. It's meant to discourage people from doing what they're for years being accused of. And so crucifying Jesus is like a public service announcement that Pilate's making. You don't need the priests to be the instigators. You don't need the temple tantrum to trigger anything, any priestly activity. And all you need is priests who want to keep the city with the lid on during the holiday so that everybody goes home basically in one piece. And so that's how my mind has changed.
What do you think about Jesus ben Ananias and Josephus' writings, where he kind of is saying, woe, you see these woes in Mark, but like he
prophesies the destruction of the temple.
Yeah, do you think this is written after the war and an invention by Josephus?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. He could actually be thinking that the temple would be destroyed, and he gets beaten and then released. He's not killed by the Romans. The Romans think he's crazy. He must have been really irritating because he had a several year. I think he begins it in 62.
Yeah.
So he has a several year run before the war breaks out. Who knows?
It is interesting to think about. So.
Yeah. But the fact that he was allowed to, the priests aren't going after him for saying that the temple's going to be destroyed. He's allowed to sing his prophecy for years, unimpeded by the priests. So, again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to those who contributed in the GoFundMe on making this trip possible for these 12 recordings with Paula Fredriksen. I want to give a special shout out to you. Your names are chiseled in history. I also want to thank everybody who has become a patron of MythVision, making stuff like this possible, taking academic work that is hiding behind all of these scholarship, all of these colleges, and making it public knowledge for everybody to learn.